raspberry forest. That's on the other side of...
The mountains of much snowia. The journey will be difficult, but the wisdom you seek cannot be gained without work. There are other dangers.
I don't see anyone. Ow! What the? Oh, snow job, you idiot.
Snow job? You'll believe anything.
Retard.
I've always liked Veggie Tales. I don't care what they say. We're in the land of much snow, yeah. When it comes to divorce, the devil has set up a snow job for us totally when it comes to what the church really teaches about separation, divorce, all that kind of stuff. Now, and it's not easy to get around it because it's so pervasive. Now, let's enter the guy we're here to talk about, which is Father Casti Connubii, all right? Super popular. A lot of people watch him. Pretty liberal, of course. My friend over at Seth, Deuterocomical. He sent me the video. Let's go ahead and watch it. It's very fast, very short, but then we're going to dissect it a little bit. And like I said, this thing is a full-on snow job with all the way he lays it out really quick. But like I said, we're going to go through it. Here, watch this. Just listen, all right? And we'll go.
Despite the popular misconception, divorce is not always a sin in the Catholic Church and can even be recommended at times. How is this the case? First, let's start with marriage itself, which for Catholics is unbreakable. In the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus teaches that no human should ever separate what God has brought together through a covenant. For this reason, we believe that dissolving a marriage is impossible. This is different, however, from a civil marriage and divorce, which is more of a social contract. Because it can cause harm to children, break up the family structure, and even be a scandal society, civil divorce is always seen as a grave matter to be avoided at all costs. But that doesn't mean that both parties are equally at fault when it happens. One spouse may have been faithful and tried to work through difficulties, while the other was abusive or abandoned the marriage. The faithful party is not at fault and may even be encouraged for their own safety or well-being to live separately. When this is the case, remarriage is not possible because the marriage before God still exists, but being civilly divorced is not sinful in itself, nor does it remove someone from full life in the church.
Alrighty, got that? How easy was that? It's just the guy, the way he said it. Okay, so what did I just hear? I saw the catechism stuff. It sounds like divorce, if you have a good reason, it's fine. Everyone go to communion. There you go. All right, so now the marriage contract is effectively non-existent. So we're going to go through this slowly, okay? Slowly and painstakingly, and overturn everything he says, virtually everything he says. All right, so it's going to take maybe a half hour. Here we go. Let's start with this.
Despite the popular misconception,
that's because everybody knows and has known, like your grandma always tells you, that divorce is a sin, all right? So why is it a popular misconception? It's not a misconception. It's what everyone knows. Sort of like, despite the popular misconception, two cowboys holding hands is not really wrong. You know, it's like, really? You need to gaslight me on that? This is the snow job, okay? Hold on. He doesn't say where it comes from. Divorce isn't. Yes, divorce is always a sin because it's in the Bible, Matthew 19:9. We can get there in a minute, all right? So let's go to the next thing.
Divorce is not always a sin in the Catholic Church and can even be recommended at times.
No, divorce can never be recommended, and it is always a sin. John, what are you talking about? How can you say that? Nobody says that. All right, let's go to the source and find out why we say that. I think it's 2383. The separation of spouses while maintaining the marriage bond can be legitimate in certain cases provided for in canon law. And then it footnotes to canons 1151 through 55, which are tied to 1692 through 1696. If civil divorce remains the only possible way of ensuring certain legal rights, blah, 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 care of the children, okay, then it can be tolerated. This is because we need to have some method of protecting the kids. But in the United States, civil divorce is never the only possible way because there's always legal separation in all 50 states. You'll say, wait a minute, John, there's like 7 states that don't allow legal separation. They allow the equivalent. They don't call it legal separation, but like in Texas, I forgot the acronym for it. You can get a legal separation under a different name, all right? So there is never a cause for divorce among Catholics in the United States. Never. You could always do a legal separation, but marriage is till death. So what's all this marriage till death stuff? While we're on that subject, let's see if we can find Matthew 19:9. Did I even have it in here? There it is. Okay. So in Matthew 19:7, right here, the Pharisees go, all right, Jesus, why then did Moses command A, to give a bill of divorce, and B, to put away? So those are two things. They ask him two questions. Jesus, why did Moses allow you to divorce and then to put away? Those are two different things, two different words. One is the legal object and one is the physical separation, okay? And so, since they asked two questions, Jesus responds, and I say to you that whosoever shall, part B, to put away his wife, except it be for fornication, commits adultery. So you have an exception clause. So you can put away your wife, but only if they are the guilty party. That's the only time. So you can separate, okay? But should he marry another, he committeth adultery. All right. So in other words, the marriage bond is permanent till death, but the separation can occur. That's all. So this is why divorce is always a sin, because it's a scandal. You're telling through the civil power that we're no longer married, and that is the scandal. Okay. I guess while we're here, we can go to what Cornelius a Lapide says. He's the man. For even though a man should only divorce a chaste wife without marrying another, he commits adultery. But because he breaks the law of marriage by violating one of its conditions by putting away an innocent wife, as well as by causing her to commit adultery, as Christ explains. So even if you only divorce without marrying another, you commit adultery. So adultery is anything against marriage. So divorce by itself, should you divorce a chaste wife, separate from, okay? That's adultery. All right. Now I got more in here I could say, but let's just go back to the video.
How is this the case? First, let's start with marriage itself, which for Catholics is unbreakable.
Okay, this says 1601. It looks like it's 16160, but it's 1601. Yes, marriage is unbreakable. That means obviously permanent. There's no argument about that. The argument is they just it's called Catholic. The annulments are a Catholic divorce because they say, well, we never entered the real marriage and all that stuff, which I've talked about a lot of times.
In the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus teaches that no human should ever separate what God has brought together.
That's what we just talked about. No human. No, it's no man, but that's the new. Okay, through a covenant. Did you hear there? He
through a covenant.
There. No, it's we're going to get to that too. So nobody can separate through. It's not through a covenant. Watch this. Let's go back to this. Let's go back to the top. The matrimonial covenant. That's what so here's a catechism right here, calling it a matrimonial covenant. All right. But hang on. Blah, blah, blah. Or okay, so this, I don't need to talk about this right now. I'll come back to this. I will come back to it. All right. So let me see if I can find. Okay, here it is. Adultery, 2381. Adultery is an injustice. He who commits adultery fails in his commitment. Blah, blah, blah. He does injury to the sign of the covenant. So covenant is a sign, which the marriage bond is. The marriage bond is a sign. See how tricky they word this? This is why this is the snow job. That's the whole theme of this thing. They say a bunch of really great sounding stuff, love, bond, covenant, forever, blah, blah. No. You got to read it carefully. He who commits adultery fails in commit. He does injury to the sign of the covenant, which the marriage bond is. So the marriage bond, among other things, is a sign of the covenant. So it's a sign. Okay, so they're talking about significance, which is not a legal thing, okay? Transgresses the rights of the other spouse. Therefore, marriage is based in rights. And they're not unlimited rights. And undermines the institution of marriage. Now we're getting somewhere. By breaking the contract by which it is based, on which it is based. Golden, right there. Here, let me make this bigger. Sorry. They cannot get around this. They cannot. You have to call it a contract. There's no way around it, because otherwise marriage is a great big cloud of feelings, and that's it. Okay? It is based on a contract, and it is, and you, it, okay, let's see, he compromises the good of human generation and the welfare of children who need their parents' stable union. Not only do they need their parents' stable union, the union exists no matter how unstable it is, okay? But they also have a legal right to an intact home, okay? But they don't talk about that in the catechism these days. So let me think of where else I want. Oh, we were talking about, is it a contract or a covenant? Let's keep going on the video, and I'll clean up anything else here. I'm going to get to all of this stuff. So it's going to take about, like I said, hopefully a half hour, maybe not that long. Let's go back to this. Share this tab instead. Here we go.
For this reason, we believe that dissolving a marriage is impossible.
That's right. Dissolving a marriage is impossible. Very good. You are correct. Okay. Now he's saying this is different.
Is different, however, from a civil marriage and divorce.
Oopsies. See how fast this goes? This is different than a civil marriage and divorce. Okay, so what he's doing right here is he is separating the marriage contract from the sacrament, because he's saying this is different than a civil marriage. So here you got, right there on the video, you got Mr. and Mrs. Catholic in their civil marriage, okay? Hang on a second.
Which is more of a social contract.
Which is more of a social contract. That's silly language, and he is saying that the civil part is the contract, but we have the covenant. All right, time out, my man. We've got to get educated on this. Whoa, hold on. Let's go to Arcanum for starters, okay? This is right here, Arcanum 23. That is the encyclical from Leo the 13th in 1883 or whenever it was. Okay, so he says, let no one be deceived by the distinction which some civil jurists have so strongly insisted upon. And that is what Father Casti Cole is so strongly insisting upon. He's being deceived. He is saying the distinction, namely, by virtue of which they sever the matrimonial contract from the sacrament. Boom. That's what every bishop in the USA does, and that's what Father Casti Cole is doing. It's super evil, super sick. You are basically legalizing extortion, because anyone can go into divorce court and rip the whole thing up, take the cash and prizes, no sin, no problem, because that's how they feel inside. And this is so lame, okay? With the intent to hand over the contract to the power and will of the rulers of the state. That is exactly what he just said in here. He said it's only the a kind of a social contract, and you're handing it over to the powers of the state, while reserving the questions concerning the sacrament to the church. Sound familiar? In other words, go ahead and get your divorce first and then come over for your annulment. That is what the flowchart is today. This is heresy, because you are separating what God conjoined. Like we said back in Matthew 19:9, right here, you can only separate an innocent spouse. Whoever puts away their spouse except for fornication, so they're guilty of adultery, all right? But no fault says you can put away for any reason or no reason at all. Let's go back to a distinction, or rather a severance of this kind cannot be approved for. It's for certain it is that in Christian marriage, the contract is inseparable from the sacrament. Holy cow, what did I just read? I can't believe it. What did it just say? A severance of this kind cannot be approved. For certain it is that in Christian marriage, a contract is inseparable from the sacrament. That means if you are validly married, if until there's a done annulment, you cannot move out. You cannot separate before the annulment. That's what it means. Unless you get a separation decree and there's a separation trial, okay? You got to have that first, which they stopped doing those because marriage is now love and marriage has no rights and marriage is not a contract because it's a covenant of love and all this fun stuff. This is the reality that no one is getting at or talking about. All the bishops are in super hot water, not going there for political reasons. And for this reason, the contract cannot as well. For Christ our Lord added to marriage the dignity of a sacrament, but marriage itself is the contract. Marriage is the contract itself. Did you hear that, Father Casey Cole? Marriage is the contract itself. That's what this CCC says as well. It's not this. You can talk about significances and what it means and all this stuff, but it is the contract. Whenever it is lawfully concluded, that means consummation of the physical, not consummation of the emotional, all right? Because you can only consummate the good of the spouses at death. So good of the spouses is not essential, which it says in my background right there. There's Pope Paul VI in 1976. Marriage exists independently of love. He said that to the Roman Rota because he is a doctor of canon law, and he started realizing, look, man, you guys are off to the races. You're basing all these McNulments on love. Okay. I'm going to push pause for a second. I'll come. Okay, let us continue. What is Father Cole going to say now?
Because it can cause harm to children, break up the family structure, and even be...
Hold it. I'm sorry I had to cut it so quick, but it can cause harm to children, break up the family structure. Then he is citing the Catechism 2384 through 2385. Yeah, let's go there real quick. All right. Because this blows by so fast. We've just got a 2384. I wonder if we have that in there. I don't think I have it because it's been gone over a zillion times. It just says marriage is a contract. Maybe I'll just find it real quick. Okay, so on the Vatican website, 2384, divorce is a grave offense against the natural law. This is because one flesh, you can't rip that apart, kind of like taking someone's arms and legs off, all right? And for other reasons too, like, the kids. So divorce is a grave offense against natural law. Objective every time, because it's not because it's a piece of paper in a legal sense. It's because you are forcing the separation of spouses. This is what you cannot do except for fornication, per Matthew 19:9, all right? And it's all been redefined after the Beatles to say it's about invalidity. And we're going to get to why that's impossible in a minute, but hold on. It claims to break the contract. That's right. Divorce claims to break the contract. People go to divorce court and say, I'm not going to live with my spouse anymore. So I'm breaking the contract. You have no right. You have no authority. That's entitlement. That's extortion to break that and take everything. Okay, but that's what they do. That's why it's a grave offense to which spouses freely consented. Okay, by the way, claims to break, here's that word contract again, not covenant. To which spouses freely consented to live with each other till death. So that they don't have to consent over and over and over every day to live with you. They don't have to consent to marital rights every day, all the time, each time. It's one-time consent. There it is. They consented once. You live with each other till death. Divorce does injury to the covenant of salvation, of which sacramental marriage is a sign. Okay, so we already talked about that. This covenant of salvation language is not legal per se. It's more of its significance, a sign, to which sacramental marriage is a sign. So one could unpack that. That's when you call Christopher West into the room. The problem is you cannot apply signs to legal terms, all right? Okay. Contracting a new union, blah, blah, blah. Okay, even it is recognized. grabs the gravity of the rupture. Yes, that's right. So it's not. So this is like Cornelius Lapide says. It's if you separate, that is adultery. If you contract a new union, that is adultery. You're just adding to the adultery. Like we said back here, like we said with Cornelius Lapide, even though a man should only divorce, separate that is, without marrying another, he commits adultery. So that's what it is. Hold on. Let's see if we got everything else here. Share this tab. Then they add, I didn't see this. If a husband separated from his wife approaches another woman, he is an adulterer because he makes that woman commit adultery. And the woman who lives with him. Yeah. Okay, so marriage is permanent. And if a husband separated from his wife, so that's Matthew 19:9. You can only separate. It doesn't say whether it's guilty or innocent, okay? But if you separate, you're still married, obviously. But you can't. That is the exception clause in Matthew 19:9. All right. Let's keep going here. Sorry. Father Casey Cole. So we went through 2384 and 2385. Actually, we didn't go through 2385. Let's look at that real quick. Sorry. Ha. Let's see. Where is 2385? Let me see if I got it here. I guess I don't because it's boring. It basically says the same thing. Here, look. I'll show you. It's the same. Divorce is immoral. Great. Yes. It's nothing really. It just traumatizes the kids. Brings grave harm to the deserted spouse. Nothing really traumatizes. By the way, there's that story that's a few months old. I've been hearing about it. The girl, her Catholic mom, divorced all documented. It's pretty interesting. So she poisons her own dad. All right. That's people don't do that stuff. Obviously, normally you want to introduce serious trauma into the kids and stuff. That's when they do stuff like that. And a lot of dads commit suicide from stuff like this. All right. We'll probably have to get to that video. Maybe I'll send the link, put the link in the description, but it's crazy. Parents often torn between them because it is contagious effect plaguing society. There you go. Now, let's go back to the man, Father Casey. Hit it.
Be a scandal society, civil divorce is always seen as a grave matter to be avoided at all costs.
Civil divorce is always seen as a grave matter. That is correct because it is a grave offense per 2384 and is to be avoided at all costs. Okay. As we said, this is the snow job, all right? So we've got to parse our words and get the language right. Because divorce is a grave offense in all cases, it can never be approved because Matthew 19:9. Okay? Here it is. Whoever shall put away his wife commits adultery. Always. But with one exception, for fornication. So if they're guilty, you can put them away. That's why it's to be avoided at all costs, except for the fornication. But divorce, my friends, is never allowed, like we said, because you can always do legal separation, okay? If there were no legal separation, none, then this would apply. 2383 would apply. Where is it? Okay. If civil divorce remains the only possible way of ensuring certain legal rights, it can be tolerated. So this is what this really should say is if legal separation remains the only possible way, it can be tolerated. That's it. Legal sep. This is the part you can do if it's the only way to take care of the kids. Legal sep. Okay? But divorce is never. But they use the word divorce because that's a factually true statement. If divorce remains the only possible way, it's never the only possible way in this country. Never. If you can do legal separation. But everyone wants their new spouse, okay? And the tribunal says we want your divorce first because we can't adjudicate the separation of spouses because we cannot name, enumerate, and define the rights of marriage. We can't do it because marriage is now good of the spouse's love, which means there's nothing there because it's infinite. They admit that in canon law. So this is why they let the state do it by chainsawing the family in half. Everyone takes the arms and legs of the kids, and everyone gets their own couple arms and a couple legs, and that's what happens. And the money, because there is no other way, if there's no rights defined, that the church can adjudicate it. Hold on, let's go back.
But that doesn't mean that both parties are equally at fault when it happens.
2386. That doesn't mean, this is kind of interesting. That doesn't mean that both parties are equally at fault when it happens. Of course not. If both, think about it. Hold on. Let's just look at 2386. We'll walk through it here a little bit. See if I can find it. Hold on. See if it's here. 23. Okay. If both parties are equally at fault. No. There's in relationships and stuff, yeah, there's like he said, she said, and all that. But divorce, separation, is a legal move to separate the family. That's that's a formal thing. So it is, because it's gravely immoral to do so without just cause. The person doing it without proving their just cause that's public sin right there. So once the church started making all marriages public because of clandestine marriages and stuff, like whatever, back in the 900s and everything has to be done through the church. Let's look at CCC 2386 slowly and logically. Let's go through this again so we can make heads or tails of 2386. It can happen that one of the spouses is the innocent victim of a divorce. That is true. It can happen that one of the spouses is the innocent victim, but it also can happen. That means it can't happen that two of the spouses are innocent victims. Okay. Because if both are innocent, then divorce is not a crime or there's no problem. So you cannot have two innocent spouses in a divorce, obviously. But if everyone remains eligible for communion after divorce, then divorce is not a sin and everyone's innocent. Okay? This is the disconnect. This is how weird it gets. This is why I will give Father Casey Cole a hand. He does respond on YouTube comments a little bit, but I still ask questions and he's not getting back because he can't. They have no answer. I talked to a tribunal today about this, in fact, down in San Diego, and the judicial vicar basically said, hey, this conversation is over. There's nothing else to talk about. Because I cornered him on it. He just can't. There's nothing he can say except we don't do that anymore. You can't change nature, though. Okay, so it can happen that one of the spouses is the innocent victim of a divorce decreed by civil law. So we can't have two guilty spouses. Otherwise, because it can happen that one of the spouses is the innocent victim of a divorce. Can it happen that two of the spouses are guilty victimizers of a divorce? No. So one spouse is going to be the guilty victimizer of the divorce, or one spouse is going to be the innocent victim of the divorce. But you can't have two equally guilty of a divorce decreed by civil law. Okay? Behind the scenes in private, there can be all sorts of sin and guilt and who knows what all, but we're talking public legal move. That is through a legal separation or a divorce, there's only one innocent spouse and one guilty spouse. Otherwise, there'd be no reason for the separation. Okay. You have to have a grave cause. It's got to be something like in canon law, it says the separation of spouses, 1153, if things become out of control, which while I'm thinking of it, reminds me of something pretty. Oh God, we got to get back to it. Sorry, I'm not going to digress on that. There is considerable. Okay, let's. This is 2386 is kind of a gold mine here, but you've got to unwind it and unsnow job it. Okay, there is a considerable difference between a spouse who has sincerely tried to be faithful to the sacrament of marriage and is unjustly abandoned, and one who through his own grave fault destroys a canonically valid marriage. Yeah, you think so? There is a considerable difference. That's right. So, but they are saying that, well, this is all shades of gray. There's a little bit of difference, okay? But it's hard to say what you have an innocent spouse and a guilty spouse. So if the one who through his own grave fault destroys a canonically valid marriage by taking it to divorce court, okay, through the separation. So what I'm kind of getting back to on this is there can only be one innocent spouse and one guilty spouse. Look, one of the spouses is the innocent victim. There's the soundbite right there. One of the spouses is the innocent victim. That means not two of them. That means not none of them. Only one is. That means there's one guilty victimizer in a divorce, okay? Logically, it can't be the other way. But the way they have worded it to squeak by all this love wins stuff is that, well, it can happen that one of the spouses is the innocent victim, but I guess it can also happen that two of the spouses are the innocent victim, or no one's guilty, or everyone's, but they don't. You have to think about it. All right. Let's go back to here and continue.
One spouse may have been faithful and tried to work through difficulties, while the other was abusive or abandoned the marriage.
That's what we just talked about. Abusive or abandoned the marriage. So, yeah. So, in other words, if somebody, we just talked about that.
The faithful party is not at fault and may even be encouraged for their own safety or well-being to
live separately. The faithful spouse is not at fault. That's right. It may be encouraged to live separately. Fine. 2383. However, we're going to have to go to canon 1153. Let me push pause a second. Okay, so if you go to the catechism on 2383 and all, it will footnote to canon 1151. This is, here, look, separation with the bond remaining. Okay, that's Matthew 19:9 right there. It's not invalidity, it's separation. And there's no such thing as separation with the bond remaining if Matthew 19:9 means separate for invalidity. By the way, the church has ruled in the AAS that a suspicion of invalidity is no cause for separation on a private authority. You can't do it. But they don't talk about that anymore. This is old, okay? It's like we only do new things now. Canon 1153, this is what everyone likes to talk about. If either spouse causes grave mental or physical danger to the other spouse or to the offspring and otherwise renders common life too difficult. So that is all general language, and that's fine because it all falls under what is adultery, which is anything against marriage, okay? So if your spouse is bad news, that gives the other spouse legitimate cause for leaving. So the cause must be legitimate because the contract says you can't, just like Matthew 19:9 says. Nobody can leave except for fornication, a.k.a. adultery, a.k.a. grave mental, physical danger, So you have a legitimate cause for leaving, physically being put away or putting yourself away, either by a decree of the local ordinary. So this is because the marriage sacrament belongs to the local ordinary. And he's got to adjudicate the separation, not you, not me, not anyone else. Or even on their own authority if there is danger and delay. So everyone likes to talk about that and then move on. Because look, I can separate on my own authority if there is danger and delay. And I felt there was danger, so I just left. And it's no problem. No, you have to go through due process. Kind of like, I don't know, if your house is burning and you haven't combed your hair, you can get out the door immediately and comb your hair later. Okay, it's not like you're never combing your hair again for the rest of your life. You'll have a terrible hair life, right? You've got to get it straight eventually. So you go back and comb it. But if there's danger and delay of getting your hair just right before you step into go meet the fireman because your house is burning, you can get out of there. Same with this. If you can't get the decree from the local ordinary, aka separation decree, separation trial, separation court, like they always used to have, before the Beatles so that you can judge the he said, she said, and who's the innocent and the guilty spouse. You can go leave immediately, but you still have to go back and do your due process. Otherwise, you are an abandoner and you cannot receive the sacraments. What am I talking about? Let's go to 1152. Okay. If the innocent spouse has severed conjugal living voluntarily, aka left on their own authority, if they have left on their own authority, here, where am I? If the spouse has, God, shoot, where I was just looking at it. Okay, if the innocent spouse has severed conjugal living voluntarily, the spouse is to, that means must, is to introduce a cause for separation within 6 months to the competent ecclesiastical authority. So you got to go to your bishop and say, within 6 months, hey, I bailed, I'm out, there was danger, I got to get my separation decree, okay? After having investigated all the circumstances, is to consider carefully whether the innocent spouse, that means there's a guilty spouse as well. So, okay, can be moved to forgive the fault and not to prolong the separation permanently. So, there's an innocent spouse and a guilty spouse. We're not talking a partially innocent spouse and a partially, no. It's 100% innocent or guilty. But you got to, within 6 months, go do this. This is what Father Casey doesn't want to talk about. This is rooted in divine law, divine positive law, Matthew 19:9. You cannot separate except for adultery. That is the divine law that all this hinges on, which is why canon 90, oh shoot, I forgot which one it was right now. There's a canon law that says no bishop, I think it's 97 or something. No bishop can dispense with procedural law. So these procedures have to happen. Look, here's 1155. The innocent spouse. That means there's in every separation, there's an innocent spouse and a guilty spouse. Not a partially innocent, not a 55-45, not two guilty spouses. The innocent spouse can laudably readmit the other spouse to the conjugal life. So if there's a separation, there's an innocent spouse and there's a guilty spouse. In this case, the innocent spouse renounces the right to separate. So if you move back together, you can no longer separate you because they have a right to the conjugal life right here. Spouses have the duty and right to preserve conjugal living. That's your right. Those are your rights in the church. This is the contract. This is why this covenant sign business doesn't work when you try to apply it to the law. Okay. Fine. Let's continue with Mr. Snowjob Liberal, Father Casey Cole Priest. I shouldn't call him that. I mean, he's a priest. Okay, I totally get that. But this is important because this really shreds families, and this stuff is super bad. These guys are putting it out all the time.
To live separately. When this is the case, remarriage is not possible because the marriage before God still exists.
Yeah, that's right. When you separate, remarriage is not possible. That's, of course, yeah. No problem there.
But being civilly divorced is not sinful in itself.
We're going to have to talk about that just a little bit. Being civilly divorced is not sinful in itself. That is a true statement. That is correct. However, if you are the guilty party, it is sinful in itself. If you're the one who divorced without cause that has been and took it through due process to get a separation decree, you're the guilty party and it is intrinsic evil. That's sinful. You cannot you must be cut off from communion. You're not going to heaven because divorce is grave sin in all cases. And separation is grave sin in all cases outside of the church, outside of getting your separation decree. If you blow off that 6-month thing and just, I'm leaving and it's been years and I'm not, you have to, if you're married in the church, if you're baptized, you have to go to your bishop to get a separation decree. You have to. It's right there in the law, because Matthew 19:9. There is no separation except for adultery, which means largely anything against marriage. So, no, divorce is, just because you're divorced doesn't mean you can't receive communion if you're the innocent spouse. You are the innocent spouse if you're the one who did not file. If you did file, the only way you're an innocent spouse is if you have the bishop declare you such after doing that particular examine of the case, the he said, she said, per 1153. And then if you also go to 1692 through 1696, they talk about how marriage is public. You need the promoter of justice. You need to have a trial. This is what always used to happen. We had separation courts in this country. There was always separation courts for the life of the church regarding as soon as it started governing marriage publicly, it became the public authority in marriage. Okay. Before it was kind of a self-sacrament, but then, like I said, people were getting married in every town along the way that have a significant other. So the church's like, no, we got to standardize all this stuff. And that's what happened. I forgot what else I was going to say. We're almost done. Let's see what we got here.
Nor does it remove someone from full life in the church.
Nor does it remove someone from full life in the church. This is like the little snow job lie that rolls off everyone's tongue that says this. Divorce isn't intrinsically evil, nor does it basically cut off the sacraments, is what he's saying. Okay, that's like saying killing someone isn't it's to be avoided, but it doesn't cut you. No. 9 times out of 10, if I go take a gun and shoot somebody, it's murder, okay, unless it's serious self-defense, all right? So it's the same thing with the separation or divorce. If you do it and you didn't get exonerated by the public authority, you're guilty. That's what happens. So, oh, by the way, that lady and the daughter of the poisoned her own dad. She was guilt ridden, and she basically ended up spilling the beans. She told her friend, and her friend told the cops, and so she was innocent. She got away with it, but obviously once she was convicted by the public authority, now she's guilty. Proven guilty. So she could not claim innocence until she can't just say, I killed my dad, but I'm innocent. No. You've got to go to trial. So she went to trial. She got forced into trial, and they said you're guilty. Every separation must be adjudicated by. So in other words, an easy way to think of it is every divorce must occur on church property. That's what you got to do. You have to do it. That's why when Jesus said in Matthew 19, look, you've got to do this. And then the Jews are like, then who can get married? Marriage is crazy. And he's like, yeah, from the beginning, we gave you the concessions, but from the beginning it wasn't so. They're like, who can do and I think I forgot the next line. Jesus is like, for those who can do it, you can do it. And then, so marriage is hard, but with grace you can. But we've redefined it, and this through this snow job here we got going on. Okay, let's see what else he's got.
Despite the popular...
All right, so that's it. That's the whole video right there. Now, we got. Let me just make sure we haven't missed anything on my little notes. Okay, here it is. Whomsoever to put away his wife, fornication. There's Matthew 19. Yep, Douay Rheims Bible. Okay, here. This is cool. Excuse me. I gotta share this tab instead. Here. This is cool right here. So, this in the Bible, this is really important. I forgot. I should have mentioned this earlier, but we're getting there. Proverbs 18:22, gone from all the other Bibles except the Douay Rheims, but Saint John Chrysostom mentions it. Saint Thomas Aquinas talks about it. Proverbs 18:22. This disproves the translation of Matthew 19:9 that everyone uses today. After the Beatles, it got changed to mean that the exception clause in Matthew 19:9 is for invalidity. That's the new definition that's wrong. The exception clause is for adultery because, look at this. This is he who has found this. He He that hath found a good wife hath found a good thing, and shall receive a pleasure from the Lord. Okay, that's right. That's like the only stuff you see in the New American Bible and the Revised Standard Edition and all that stuff. Then they stop it right there. Okay, but there's the rest of it that they cut out that you got to get to. He that driveth away a good wife driveth away a good thing. Yes, that's correct. But listen, check this out. This is anti-simp material. This is where the dudes, mostly, or anyone really, anyone who's any faithful spouse who's like, this marriage is torturing me. This is so hard. This is my spouse is like doing really bad things and I can't handle this. I'm stressing out. Okay, then take matters into your hands and take it to the church. You don't go to the marriage counselor. You don't do more cocaine to get through it, all right? But he that keepeth an adulteress is foolish and wicked. That is the phrase you can't get anywhere else except the Douay-Rheims. That's the real Bible right there. It's gone. It doesn't fit the new narrative, yo. He that keepeth an adulteress is foolish and wicked. So somebody who keeps a spouse around who caused... Okay, I don't know what happened. Everything is cool now. The power went out or something. The internet went out. Okay, he that hath found a... Okay, so he that driveth away a good wife driveth away a good thing. He that... Okay, so this, like I said, once you have a big problem, you are foolish and wicked if you don't whip it good. Take care of it. Go to the church and get a separation decree. And if you can't wait for the due process, leave immediately. Sorry to break the news to you that your nice little marriage with the kids that you thought was good needs to hang together. Yeah, of course. But this is big league stuff. You can't hang out and have a heart attack and not man up or Joan up, as the case may be. You got a big problem. You are a fool and wicked if you live with it, okay? Don't be a simp. Don't be codependent. Sorry to break the news to you. The party is over. You got to frickin' smash it in order to make it better. You can't just hang out. That's why Matthew 19:9 means separation and not invalidity. Where is Matthew 19:9? Oh boy, where is it? Right there. Okay, except to be for fornication, whoever puts a... So if you want to put your wife commits adultery, except it be for fornication. So when bad stuff is going on, you can, and you are a simp or you are a wimp if you don't put them away when things get really bad. You need to do that. That's what you got to do. You don't divorce. You don't go to counseling. You don't get an annulment. You put them away and you get a separation decree so that you can remedy things. So I'm going to show you one more thing while I'm thinking about it. Hang on. Back to the Douay-Rheims, of course. Look, this is 1 Corinthians 5:5. So they got somebody who's doing bad stuff, okay? A Catholic brother, a brother in the faith, to deliver such a one to Satan for the destruction of their flesh, that the spirit may be saved in the day of our Lord Jesus Christ. That's the purpose of the separation decree, is to either create... To judge the case so that they move back together immediately. Like, okay, fine, I will stop doing this crazy stuff, which is anti-marriage, which is adultery of some form or another, and we're going to maintain the conjugal life. But if they say, no, forget you, local ordinary, I'm not doing this. I'm leaving, I'm this, I'm that. You need to deliver such a one to the devil, cut off the sacraments, so that they sober up and they may be saved when they start thinking about death. You know what I'm saying? They're like, okay, I'm trying to find the grass is greener or whatever, but I'm going to hell. This is why you got to do this. You can't just hide under the covers about this. You got to take your spouse to court. You got to do this. You You can't just kind of hope it's going to get better if it becomes obvious. Chances are it's not, okay? In other words, this is sometimes you got to face down the school bully when you really don't want to and just go punch him right in the face as hard as you can because nothing else will work and you don't want to do it, but you got to. Let's see what else I got. Hold on. And that way you can solve the thing, solve the problem. Let's see. Let's look what else we got here. Adultery is a sign of injustice. We already did that. Okay, we already did that. Okay, this is Arcanum 23. Now, Arcanum 23, we talked about that. Let no one separate the contract from the sacrament, right? I lied to you about the half hour. We're going to probably do an hour on this. Let's go to Casti Connubii 78, which is 1930, as you know. Also, Casti Connubii basically gives the 2 thumbs up to Arcanum and says everything in here, whatever he says, we say too. So it's not like, well, that's just old and we don't do that anymore. No. He's talking, Casti Connubii, chaste marriage. The Pope is talking about the enemies of marriage. Okay, so that they say when stuff becomes when you have incompatibility of temperament or whatever, the marriage ceases and is completely dissolved. So these enemies are saying that when stuff isn't getting along, when the things hit the rocks, you can separate with your own authority because you just can. That's what the enemies of marriage are saying. But wait, there's more. Down to 79. These enemies of marriage also add that the marriage contract is to be freed from the bond. This is what Arcanum says is forbidden because Matthew 19:9 says you can't separate the contract from the bond. Okay? You have to live together if you're married. Unless the local ordinary hears your case. Unless there's fornication, right? Adultery. And that the separation and divorce are not only to be tolerated, but sanctioned by law. So these enemies of marriage, a.k.a. Father Casey Cole and your bishop, are enemies of marriage because they advocate taking that contract and not calling it a contract and just letting the state trash your family and break it up. Okay? Because after all, it's not the sacrament. They're still married. Yeah, if you're married, you have to uphold the contract. No, it's not a contract. Give me a break. We already went through that. And the separation and divorce are not only tolerated. So the enemies of marriage, Father Casey Cole is an enemy of marriage, and he says you can separate, tolerate it, and it's okay. The first point is contained in their contention that the civil act, like he said in the video, this is just a civil contract, he said. The civil act itself should stand for the marriage contract. Civil matrimony, as it's called. So the enemies of marriage, like Father Casey Cole, says that the marriage contract, civil marriage, is separate from. Okay, see, while the religious act, the sacrament, is considered a mere addition, and at most a concession to superstition, a mere addition. So he is saying that the contract is to be taken to the state, and the bond, the sacrament, is to be taken to the church. That is what no Catholic can do. That is heresy. That's exactly what it is. It's not like sort of a sin. It's heresy to separate the contract from the sacrament. Jesus says you cannot do it. You can't put them away. It's adultery if you put them away without cause. And that cause is judged by the local ordinary only, and you have 6 months to get it done. You got to keep trying, okay? You have to publicly keep trying because my bishop won't talk to me, won't do that. We don't do that. You have to keep trying. You cannot say, well, I don't have to do that because the Bible says you have to do that. The church says a cause must be adjudicated by the local ordinary. And if your local ordinary says, I'm not doing that, too bad. You have to knock on his door for the rest of your life till he hears your case. You have to let everyone know, I'm trying to get a case with the bishop. That's it. The bishop has no authority to dispense with this process. Okay. Oh, here we go. This is where Leo the Third. This is where Pius the 11th endorses Arcanum. Arcanum has weighty arguments in the encyclical letters of Leo XIII, letters which we have frequently recalled to mind and expressly made our own. Okay, so yes, Arcanum is still the thing. Let's see, we already read Cornelius a Lapide. I think that's going to be a wrap. All right, so this is super cool. Hey, don't forget, as always, John Farrell, this is Annulment Proof, the only place on YouTube where marriage gets defined. I'm interested in hearing all your complaints and everything you want to say about me in the comments, because I'll talk to you as much as you want about it. You can call me up, et cetera, et cetera. Until next time.